progress. The broadcast is live. Hello, good morning, everyone. I'm so happy to be with Wes and our guest Josiah this morning. Amy, as always, who represents and keeps us, oh my gosh, she just keeps us grounded and helps us just share with the world and everyone what we're trying to share and say and do with healing. It's Sunday Safe Spaces. We are super excited this morning to connect with Josiah Gilliam. And Josiah will explain a little bit more, but I'm going to give you my understanding. My Brother's Keeper is a nonprofit. It's a national organization. President Obama really gave it leverage when he wanted to focus more energies into My Brother's Keeper. And the city of Pittsburgh actually has it within our offices, and Josiah represents My Brother's Keeper. And we have him on to help us share about what they're doing for collective community healing. Wes and I are we're here to lift us up. You know, there's so much going on that our intention is to address it, but also find ways that we can, as a community, heal ourselves. We want to dismantle racism and do all of that, but for Black people, for people with disabilities, for people of color, we need healing, and we are working towards healing ourselves, and we want to offer solutions to help us heal so that we can better navigate and gain capacity to thrive in a system that hasn't always offered that to us. So thank you for joining us. Wes, do you have a few words you would like to share with the people this morning?
Oh man, good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another Sunday Safe Spaces. If you've tapped into these conversations before, you know they're pretty powerful. The dialogue is great, and we have amazing people that join us and conversate. So, of course, we have Josiah. I'm excited to learn more about the work that he's doing with My Brother's Keeper, as well as, you guys will learn. But literally, these is just spaces where that we can have conversations that sometimes it's hard to have throughout the weeks that we, when we're around peers that might not look like us or might not understand. And like April said, we're just trying to create healing within our communities, especially with so much going on around just society itself. So as long as we can heal each other, as long as we can keep providing, information that can help us heal, then we can become better as a community, as a culture, as a society. So I'm excited. Thank you guys. Again, we're here every third Sunday. So make sure that you tap in. But yeah, let's start this conversation because it's mental, like I was telling April earlier, it's Mental Health Awareness Month. So I think it's just important that we have these conversations, but even in this month itself, just the vulnerability and transparency that, we all need, some type of healing and conversations that can help us heal. So I'm just excited all the way around because I actually needed this conversation today. And so my transparency is that, I needed some healing myself throughout this month. And I've been waiting really for this call to find some of that place. So let's get it started.
Josiah, the floor is yours.
Thank you all so much. It's a real pleasure to be with you, and happy Sunday, as we like to say here. I really appreciate the opportunity to share space, even if it's virtual, and to share a little bit about the work, because I've been thinking a lot around these themes. April, you and I have talked about this extensively in the context of the work here, but also acknowledging that Wesley's lifting up that it's Mental Health Awareness Month. It's a timely discussion, and coming out of a global pandemic where a lot of us have been isolated, and there's been, I think it's fair to say, in some ways, an exacerbation of a lot of factors that we deal with in community and in our personal lives. How can we think about these topics going into the summer, kind of reintroducing ourselves to each other and committing ourselves to living together and just being with each other. So I'll start with just an overview of My Brother's Keeper, and then please cut me off or jump in. And Amy, thank you for your time. Appreciate you being here with us. So My Brother's Keeper, as April mentioned, was started by during the Obama presidency by President Obama. It was started after Trayvon Martin was murdered. So a lot of commonality with what we've seen too often in the past calendar year. And it was a moment to kind of, the first Black president, creating an initiative to focus directly on Black men and boys. So the initiative comes with a strong initial focus on Black men and boys. They created 6 goal areas that look at the life cycle of a life and a lot of systemic factors that can impact those lives. And they put out a challenge to the entire nation for cities, counties, tribal communities to join the initiative if they felt so inclined, and to figure out what it meant for them on the ground. Here in Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, we have a mayor in the city of Pittsburgh, and we also have a county executive, because there are 130 municipalities in the county, and both of them accepted the challenge. So it's a city and county-wide initiative here. We accepted all 6 goal areas because there are organizations and community leaders and faith leaders that are already working in those spaces, as you all know. A lot of this work is about connecting what's happening on the ground, whether that's to resources, to each other, to young people, whatever the case may be. I started working on the initiative when I was in the nonprofit space here in Pittsburgh. I was working for a community-based organization called the Homewood Children's Village. It's based off of the Harlem Children's Zone that a lot of people are familiar with, Jeffrey Canada out there. It serves a predominantly Black community in Pittsburgh. It's education focused, and they do a lot of convening, as you might imagine, with different folks. And I was working there, and they wanted to do something in digital literacy, kind of to address the digital divide and provide resources to organizations in that space. And I just felt like it was a really compelling opportunity for an organization of that kind to bring something to this big initiative. It's very fancy, nationwide thing. And here we were, this tiny little organization. What could we do to contribute? That went well. We were able to develop an action plan after that process. We were able to fundraise in local philanthropy to support it, and to really just talk about how the initiative can function. We have, in Pittsburgh, just a little bit about the landscape. We have more nonprofits per capita than any American city. Thousands of organizations. We have an enormous foundation community, top 5 in terms of total assets in the entire nation. So you think about New York, you think about Houston, you think about Los Angeles. Top 5 here in Pittsburgh, number 1 in per capita giving, where we have a relatively small population compared to those other large cities. We have dozens of regional universities, and we have all these different versions of local government. So if you kind of visualize that Venn diagram, there's a lot of activity in the middle of it. And so an initiative like MBK can be very valuable, because if you're focused on connections and supporting what's happening on the ground, you can bring a lot of resources to the conversation. As we were putting together the action plan and getting it funded, the mayor decided that he wanted to create a position within city government so that there could be kind of like this blend of practical philanthropy and systems change. My role was a blend of the mayor's office and city parks, which is our parks and recreation department. This idea, so how does this conversation matter in facilities that the city owns and operates? How does this matter in our rec centers? How does it matter in our parks? If there is programming in the rec centers, how can those be improved? If they're not, how can the community directly inform what that looks like? So as a rec center is getting renovated, it's getting renovated based on what the community would like to see, like what would bless and support the community. So that was the intention. I joined the mayor's office 2 Februaries ago, and then COVID happened, last year. And so we've been in this space of trying to play switchboard, trying to connect organization to resources, and trying to understand what's happening on the ground as much as possible. Fortunately, with myself and my track record, and then the amazing leaders we work with, this work has never left the community space. It's always been informed directly by folks on the ground. And it's been a real ride with COVID, as we all know. It took a matter of weeks from when we were all heading home to hear that there were racial disparities as it related to COVID, and that communities of color were being disproportionately impacted, and more explicitly that Black folk were dying. Like that came like very quickly into like our radar, was that it was hitting African American and Black communities, and that folks were dying. And so there was a lot of change that happened in the region to make sure to like try to prevent that from happening, because for Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, we weren't hit as quickly as some of these larger metropolitan areas or some of like the coastal cities. So we felt like we had a little bit of a window to see how this was happening other places. Huge entities and institutions and leaders that did not have a reputation for working together did work together to try to like get ahead of things. Or community organizations were not just empowered, were like highlighted and supported to really to be those signal boosters and to like engage and get as many people on the same page as possible in terms of what we were facing. And then this year, finally, we our theme is wellness. Because we want to just like focus in on it and highlight and uplift anyway to emphasize what's possible for an individual to heal, for a family to heal, and for communities. Because COVID is a public health crisis, but there have been a number of even just public health crises that have been facing our communities for years and years now. We think about gun violence and violent crime as a public health crisis in this region. So we really feel like COVID may present us with this reset to talk about these things in a nuanced and thoughtful way, but then to really embody and highlight ways that we can think about healing in a nuanced way, because that's what we need.
Oh my God, Josiah, you hit on so many things. Thank you for that. And at the core of what Wes and I have been doing individually in our own personal lives has been about wellness, because that is the road towards healing internally and then transferring that to our families, communities, and systems. You tapped on a few things that I want to highlight, and then I'll see where the two of you would like to jump into with this conversation. So one, wellness, and throughout our conversation, we can share some of those things that we have done and we have seen personally and collectively to help, bring upon wellness for ourselves. But when you talked about bringing philanthropic agencies together with the government and in that changing systems, that's huge, especially in this day where we use the term defund and defund the police. And then you have people who are like, you guys just want to have Black people running out here crazy with guns and shooting everybody, which that's a whole nother conversation. Mm-hmm. But it's, reallocating resources. So resources are put, my belief, into community healing and bringing equity to all and giving everyone a chance to thrive. You talked about like nonprofit. Wes has a nonprofit. I'm working with Open Up as a nonprofit. Yeah. The Digital Divide, I'm going to be working with Pittsburgh in that space. So I love that concept too, or an issue that we can talk about is like, how do we keep community agencies thriving? And just My Brother's Keeper and the focus on Black men. I think as a mother, I've said this before, of 3 Black men, I'm actually the only woman in my entire house, including the dog. So we've talked about the intersection of the focus is on Black men. And I do want to talk about why that is important, because it is important. And there is the intersectionality of it all. But why a focus on Black men is important. So those are the 3 things: wellness, the philanthropic and the community, and the focus on Black men. And you brought up gun violence. And I know Wes had shared a little bit about, we opened up with talking about violence. So Wes, I could springboard it to you if you want to give a little in that space and then take it from there.
So I'm curious. I had a question about first, Josiah, you said that Philly has a lot of nonprofit organizations. Pittsburgh. There you go.
Because we ain't Philly.
All right. Pittsburgh. Sorry, y'all. Still waking up a little bit. But I guess that my first question, before I just even hit on anything else, because we know kind of what, nonprofit organizations do, or, and kind of what their well, a lot of their missions are is to serve the community, right? And so I guess my question would be, is it because of so many different disparities that's within the communities there that there are so many people trying to find a way to serve, and it goes to expanding all over the country? Just because like here in Kansas City, we don't, for me as a Black man that's a nonprofit founder, you don't find a lot of us, and so and I'm always kind of, when I'm searching, it's not common in our communities. Instead it's like we're the ones going out to these nonprofit organizations to find some assistance or aid, but we're not the ones trying to create it for our own community. So I think, like, for me, I think that would be maybe the first part to kind of hit on. And of course you might not know or can speak for the other organizations, but like literally, what was the drive in a sense to be able to create something knowing that there were so many other organizations kind of pushing some type of mission? Because then you talk about the collaboration of them. And so I'm thinking, of course that's something that I want to do, because we know that there's power, there's strength in numbers, right? So you don't have to reinvent the wheel, you just bring a lot of people together to start turning it better. And so so what would your take would be, on really, was that your push was to do a lot of collaboration because of how many organizations was out there, or was it enough organizations with kind of like similar missions and a reason why you guys push for a bigger change? Because I think, like, yeah, it's something that I could probably educate my community on, but even in this conversation, we can educate more people on the value of these organizations and the power that they have when it comes to legislative, decisions and things, because we can go through those doors. And I think that way, then we can trickle down and talk about like the gun violence and the wellness. But I think like helping people understand, the service that is out there, and then how can they create to be able to serve people with the problems that they have in their life too.
Yeah. It's a great question. So we deal with, competition and redundancy and folks, fighting for the same dollars all the time, as you may imagine. You have all these foundations, but then you have a bunch of folks that are, trying to beat each other to get those dollars. And then, folks don't get as much as they wanted. And then there's competition. Quite frankly, in like in the Black nonprofit space, we call it nonprofit gangbanging, is what we like affectionately refer to it as. Because you got a lot of guys, and it's right now it is mostly guys. They want the flag, you know what I mean? They want to be like, we're the ones that are delivering change for the community, and it's coming from a good place, but then it does lead to that competition. And so I had been real immersed in the nonprofit space, and so it was very important for me, if I was going to join this MBK efforts, to do whatever I could to incentivize collaboration. And to your point, Wesley, and I'll be honest with you guys, I had some established community leaders, come to my meetings and tell me to my face that this has all the familiar trappings of becoming another 501c3, even though I told them explicitly that we were not going to be creating a My Brother's Keeper organization. This is an initiative. We felt like we had a chance to raise funds and to support work on the ground, and we felt like we could incentivize collaboration. But they didn't just believe me, I'm just like some young kid, like sending calendar invites and like follow-up notes. They're not new to it. They're like, look, we're not new to this. We're true to this for like 50 years. And like, you're just going to make another organization and get out here and hustle like the rest of us. So we had to build trust there that we weren't going to go that route, but that we could also deliver value. So I'll give an example of how we did that. One of the original grants that we got was, again, to focus on digital literacy. So we said, well, let's put together a community of practice with organizations that already do that work. So first we did around the county, we went and engaged directly with young Black men around the topic. When we say digital literacy, what does that mean to you all? When we say digital divide, have you heard of that? What does that mean? When it comes to technology, what at all are you interested in? If we were to say that there was a coeducational opportunity, what would it be? And then we offered to those young men that we were engaging with the opportunity to become trained facilitators for the ongoing meeting. So we had youth engaging with youth in these facilitated conversations, just talking with their peers. And sometimes it was coding, sometimes it was gaming, sometimes it was websites. It was very, very different. You know, our young people are brilliant and they're individual. It was really vast. So we said, okay, we think we know that the general landscape. We want to do this community of practice. We want to pay everybody for their time. So we're paying the young people. We're paying the young people to be facilitators. And now we're going to pay the organizations that are coming into this to be a part of it. And then we're going to fund their ideas. And to get into the community of practice, we called it the Digital Literacy Collaborative. They had to come with a partnership already identified. So it was a pairing. So two organizations would come in saying, we're going to work together and with the rest of the group to figure out what we can do together to kind of make good on what these young men are saying to us in our communities about what they'd like to see. So we had like a local community college and a local like music focused nonprofit collaborate. We had some established ones. We had some small ones. And we paid everybody to participate. And then the money went not just to them for that experience, but to their programmatic ideas. So there was one accredited course that got created through the community college. Another one, it was like there was a class where they were literally teaching basics to their young people in their football program on like how to connect to some of these internet platforms. And for us, for MBK, we just wanted to honor what was said in the space. It wasn't like, no, we want you all to make accredited courses, because not everyone's set up to do that. If you have a football program and you're working like every day with these kids, you know how it is. Coaches are coming out of their own pockets to take care of the little homies and all of this. And you're saying that it would be good to teach these young men how to connect, how to like set up for a Gmail account, how to set up for like these simple things, then we're going to pay you to do that. And so that's how we thought about it, man. And still to this day, we're not a 501c3. Our funds are at a Black community foundation downtown. They let us, they're the ones that cut the checks, so to speak. They let us engage directly with the organizations, but it's about supporting that work. And then, as it's probably clear, building a track record so people trust us, you know what I mean? And so when we go to a foundation too and say, hey, we want to fund this kind of work, they're not worried that this is going to Josiah's piggy bank or something like that. And what's really helped with that is the political engagement, because now that my role is in the mayor's office, people know that the check ain't coming to me. Because if the check's coming to the city, it's got to go through city council and it's got to go through legal, and it's just that's just too much. So I'm kind of like I'm standing right there, but it's not coming to me. You know what I mean? And that's building trust.
And you said something that was so key, that you're providing value to people who are giving value within ourselves. And so paying these young men to learn, not because they're ignorant, it's because these are things that were withheld from them, or they don't have the money, the time, the capacity to learn that. Not because they're not capable intellectually of learning it. The opportunities are not there. And then showing someone that your time is valuable, I think that's monumental, because I feel, and Wes, I'll, throw it on your end, especially working in a nonprofit space, that we are asked to help and serve and heal each other for free. So work to the bone, work to the core, give the system 40 hours a week and then some to make a minimal amount of money, because you will not be paid the same as your white counterpart. For a Black woman, you are on the lowest totem pole. And then from there, a Black man's given a little more. And then from there, we go up to Asian, Latina, but to show like we value you so much that we're willing to put you on equal playing field. I think that is really key. And then the collaboration, the joint collaboration, to show we don't have to be crabs in a barrel.
Well, I think about, I like that part, April. And yeah, kudos to you to just put money up front, because I think that, oh man, you find a lot of these organizations and things, and they're more concerned about like how to operate instead of like what to impact. And like you're like, no, we're going to take these funds, we're going to pay these people, we're going to teach them the things that they need to know, but we're also going to give them some type of monumental gain so that they can understand their worth. And I think like in our communities, we get so much help and aid but nobody understands their worth because they're not presented with that value. But it was something that you said too. And of course, like you said, you had to build that track record. And you know, as a Black man in this nonprofit space, I find that it's hard. We have to build track records because people assume that we will take, you know, money and put it in our pocket and not create the impact that we're destined to create, when there are other organizations that could start, you know, 6 months down the line and raise buku amounts of money because they don't look like you or I, and their impact isn't in the communities maybe that are within ours. You know, their language might be right. We know the underserved terms and things that people use for grants and whatever now. But it was just, I thought that was important for you to share, is because I mean, I've had to build a track record, right? Like I haven't paid myself through my organization. I take pride in that. So everywhere I go, I'm always telling people like, yeah, I haven't even given myself a salary. Like it all goes back into the org, because it seems like it's important to share those things because so many people look at us in a particular way, you know, and even though we're learning this game, right? Like these are certain things that we wasn't taught. We wasn't taught that we could start, you know, organizations and serve our communities in a way that so many other organizations have made money to serve the communities that they won't even walk in, right? So it's like for us, it's, you know, we're literally building a track record, and then we get credibility from some type of public platform. Like right now, my organization is nominated for CNN 2021 CNN Heroes, right? Like, and so for me, the constant grind that we've been on is reaching certain different avenues that is giving us that credibility. But if we were just kind of stay grass rooted here, it would be just a larger push, because people, they kind of overlook the work that you're doing because of how you look. You know, and I've found that in so many ways. So just you saying like you had to build that track record, you kind of had to make sure that you let people know that like, all right, this check isn't going to me, this check is going to someone else. And then changing your model up where majority of your money is being pushed out to not only just the the overseers in a sense, you're also pushing out money to the movers and shakers, you know. And I think that speaks so many, you know, speaks volume. Like I think that, you know, for the work that I do with the programming that I do, I really put as much funds into developing the people that we serve and teaching them how to be able to take control of their own lives than I'm doing to take the funds and just have a great life, right? So I think I just wanted to attack that because I felt like even off of the things that April was saying, that was just very important, even for me to hear that I'm not the only one in this game kind of doing that, because it is, you know, for more people that's trying to look at the philanthropy piece, they just need to be aware it is harder for us, but the value that we have in the heart and empathy that we're coming into it with is the reason why we keep getting blessed with the certain, you know, national news and things that keep hitting us. Is because we're leading with empathy, we're moving with integrity. And I think that a lot of people don't do that when they're going into organizations. So I just thought that was very important. I do find some people that's like, let me get that flag, let me get that top tier. Yeah. But I have found more people that have understood the struggle and understood exactly what we've been going through, to see that in order to make change, you have to be invested so much into that change that you're giving majority of it, whatever you're getting, you're giving it. Because of course we get into books later, but one of my favorite books is How to Own Your Own Mind. And it always says like the man that, you know, truly, you know, seeks wealth is, you know, it gives more than he looks to receive. And I've always lived by that. And I think that, you know, even for you and your story and what you guys are doing, is the blessing's going to continue coming because we're giving more than we receive, you know. And so, yeah, it was just that track record. It was confirmation to me, because I mean, I'm always like, yeah, but we're on CNN Heroes. We done did this, we done did that. And if I didn't have that credibility, I think it would be a lot harder for me I mean, it's even still hard even with that, but I think it would have been a lot harder for me just in the growth that I'm trying to do within my community, because people oversee us just because of how we look, you know, and they have their own biases and their own conclusions on what we're going to do with the money,
right,
because of what they do with it.
Right. So let me just respond there, man. Some words of encouragement. First of all, there's more blessings coming to your way for sure. You know, congrats on all that. Well deserved. And credibility is an important point, because, you know, we have to be able to navigate systems and make things happen. But for those of us that are actually interested in things getting better, that are actually interested in actual impact, people's lives getting changed, and then getting changed over time, the work that you're doing is the most important piece. There's no shortage of top-down ideas, and like you said, like even folks' language is rooted in this idea of, you know, underserved communities, underrepresented folks, you know, all this stuff, but then they won't walk through the community, you know, so to speak. And when I look to nature, I see examples that I think are encouraging to those of us in this journey. If you look at lightning, for example, lightning strikes in both directions. It takes an electrical imbalance in the clouds and in the ground, and you can watch slowed down videos, and you'll see like lightning coming up this way, lightning coming down this way. That's when it meets. That's when you see that discharge that we associate as lightning. But it takes those of us that are willing to start where they're at to get that going, you know, to start to move things. And it takes everyone playing, you know, their part too. There is a systems role here. We need massive systems change almost every which way that you look. So it can't just all be grassroots. We understand that. It needs resources. So there needs to be people with capital to provide those resources. We know that there are ways, you know, I grew up with a story around this guy named Nehemiah, and there's this beautiful sentiment in there of everyone having their spot on the wall, and that they're equipped for their spot on the wall. So we need the people in philanthropy, in the corporate sector, in politics, in the nonprofit space, on the ground, in our faith communities, you know, all kind of rowing together. That's really how, you know, it can work. But that's really what it takes. And, you know, I like to think of MBK in that way, because we're not trying to be the nonprofit doing the work on the ground. We're trying to connect it. But we also want to like talk with them on the ground about the power that they can have in an advocacy lens to push policy. And then we want to talk about how folks in the foundation community can support things philanthropically. And then we want people in the corporate sector to understand that if they help us with pathways, that they can change the trajectory of not just an individual and a family, but their own operations, because they're running out of talent, having done what they're doing. And so it's in their best interest, you know, to row with us as well. And what I found is in a lot of these spaces, there's a lot of good people with good intention. They just don't know what to do or where to start, because everyone only knows what they know and they don't know what they don't know. So they may know finally that it makes sense to say something like equity or diversity and inclusion on their corporate communications, but they don't know anyone in the community. And if they did, maybe things would be better. So for me, you know, Pittsburgh's a big football town. It's all about strategy, right? And it's all about, you know, here's how we do things. But I feel like I'm a basketball player. That's how I grew up. I like making those bounce and chest passes between folks so that they get off to the races. I'm all about the flow. I don't need to be the Department of Human Services if I can connect the Department of Human Services or organizations on the ground that are making a difference, so to speak. You know, and then of course, what you find is that people have been doing this work to a certain extent. And you can honor that. And I feel like that makes people feel good. You know what I mean? When you're like, look, I see you. And here's how we can connect, and here's how we can move forward. So anyways, man, I just wanted to speak that, you know, that your grind on the ground, it doesn't surprise me that folks like CNN and others are going to highlight it and uplift it. But it makes sense for them to do that. You're the most valuable piece of that puzzle. Like straight up, like people that have an on the ground track record, that are willing to put in the miles to walk the ground literally. That's the ball game, man. You know, that really is. So that's been encouraging to me on the ground. And now I'm sitting in this mayor's office spot, and I'm trying to figure out what I can do from here. And I've never worked in city government before, much less in a mayor's office. And I feel like sometimes I'm in a car and I don't know what the buttons do yet. Like I know this is a nice car, and I know that like I could probably do some cool stuff, but like, you know, I'm new here. So, you know,
let me just try it, right? Let me just,
you know, I'm poking stuff. like where there's this right now, and you guys know how this is, and I'm sure April, you've been seeing it a lot. There's a huge surge in violence that's been happening in the past like several months here in Pittsburgh and in like the region. And when you start talking with folks on the ground, COVID realities, economic realities are really, popping up for people, and they're in desperate plight, and they're trying to make moves, and there's less moves to be made, and it's leading to violence. And so we're trying to figure out what we can do about that, where we just announced a grant program to support some of the street outreach work that's happening, not just because it's like we fund street outreach, but because like homies are really on the ground with these folks. Like there are personal relationships in our communities that have been able to like intervene and to prevent violence from happening, or once violence does happen, to respond to that traumatic incident, to take care of the families, to take care of the young people involved, what have you. And so we've been talking with them. I had a meeting on Friday for like the better part of an hour with several of our folks that work in different neighborhoods. And I'm like, okay, super. Yeah. You want to put together a summit. You want to get like a van to help get folks to activities. Great. Yeah. If we can support that, wonderful. Can you talk to me about like what some of the little homies are going through? And the one story they shared was this one young man. He's done everything that he needs to do in order to get to the NCAA and play sports. But there's like a clearance fee, like an NCAA clearance fee or something. $75 is what this is. And he doesn't have it. His family doesn't have it. And he was kind of popping off on Snapchat, very frustrated about this. Like he's done all this work, and like now he feels like he's not going to get his chance and stuff like that. And that's a very dark place, to be. And maybe he's out and about and something happens and it's violence and then everything goes away, So my conversation with the outreach worker was, so, if we get these funds, your direction, once all the application stuff goes through, is this something you can help this kid with, He's like, yeah, absolutely. Cause like, that's what, in Wesley, these folks, like they're coming out their own pockets, April, coach, a lot of like they'll do what it takes. And that's the kind of micro level I want to be able to get to. Like, yes, systems change, and yes, whatever. But like, if we can take care of these small needs, these basic needs, that's real impact. And then we could talk about, other ways of moving things forward.
Yeah, because then you help that individual find an element of success. And then he, in turn, will help another kid that's coming up having the same issue. He, in turn, will get that degree. He, in turn, may go to graduate studies. He could go to semi-pro. He can go to levels where he can impact his family and the community. And you show him his value. $75 is nothing to a lot of us. And that's important. And I want to say to people who are watching this morning and in the future, that this is important, why you put somebody like a Josiah in your office and you put them in this space. This is why someone who's in corporate, who doesn't know what to do or how to do it, maybe because of ignorance or because they are sheltered or because they choose not to walk through the community and understand it for themselves. But this is why diversity matters. This is why we put people in places and we have people who represent humanity. Not just white humanity, but all of humanity, because we need to come into these spaces collectively so we understand what it means and what is needed for society. Like Wes has been sharing, like he goes to hotels and he can't even take a damn shower because they say they have inclusive rooms that are handicap accessible. And it's like, what the entire heck? There's obviously no one on the staff who can tell them what it's like. Mm-hmm. And it's important to put us in these places. And I wanted to bring up this issue of trust, and Josiah, like building trust with those, probably my generation, who have walked the walk and done the work, to the younger generation within the community. But also we're walking in spaces where we're just not trusted only because of the color of our skin. And what impact has that taken on Wes, you and Josiah, as an individual? And then how do you work to navigate through that personally and professionally?
Wes, you want to lead us off, man?
Oh man. No, that was a good question, April. I think for me, the way that I've navigated into spaces is just by, that's just a good question. I think I go into spaces really unapologetic and just like owning who I am, because I know the disparities or how people see me, period. And I know that a lot of trust factors come in, like, just to be transparent, like I'm a black man, that, is paralyzed from the waist down. So I always tell people that I've been able to maneuver in certain spaces because I'm less of a threat. And I know that from just being, from just walking 24 years of my life. And I know how people used to react to me in rooms to now how people react to me in rooms. And it's like, if I bring my friends and my group of friends, now there's a harder, I start to see how people react toward that. And it seems like the trust level and the trust factor becomes a little bit harder, because now I have to kind of prove to them that I'm not alone, but the people that I'm bringing in with me aren't the people that they see, or the perception of the people that they visualize. And so again, I think for me, it's just being able to own myself and own the things that I'm doing to be able to be trusted in certain spaces. But I've also realized that if people can't accept me for who I am, then I shouldn't be in that space anyway. So I think, again, that comes from my awareness of who I was before, just because as a black man growing up in poverty in certain neighborhoods, people always looked at you a certain way. And so, we wasn't really accepted in a lot of spaces. So for me, I don't look to be accepted in spaces. I just look to owning my truth and owning myself and making sure I go into those spaces where that people not really, I could care less if they trust me as much as they feel me, and they can. And so it's like, people are always going to have their ways of seeing you. So as long as you come in as yourself, come in as you are, well, they have to accept that, and they have to accept that instead of you trying to accept the perception that they see of you. And so I think, like, again, my method is just really just owning my truth, because regardless if people are going to trust me for being a black man, right, or that's something that I have to build trust, there's also another stigma of a person that lives in a wheelchair. And so, when it comes to what I represent two communities that are seen less than within society's views. And so again, like, that's probably the reason why I don't go in trying to look for people to trust me or build that trust as much as just owning myself. Is because, people could be like, oh yeah, I accept, black people. And then they're like, oh shit, he's in a wheelchair. Because some people have not accepted that fact, and they have their own perceptions of what that is when it comes to living with a disability. It's like those intersections, like April was speaking of earlier. It could be someone that's like, oh man, I've accepted one part of you, but that doesn't mean I have accepted all the other areas. Like I spoke of, like with peers, right? Bringing peers into the room that people probably never seen before. They're like, oh, those are people you hang around with. It's like, so again, the way people see the things that I'm bringing, I can only have them, it becomes a reality, something that they can trust, if I trust myself with just owning my truth. And, again, if you don't accept me for who I am, then I'm not with it. And I know that, like Josiah, you hit it earlier of talking about how we're in need of certain people in certain rooms, you know what I mean? And trying to find that collaboration. I think for me, Kansas City is a really, really crazy city. And we're in Missouri, which is a very red state, as well as Kansas. And we're together. So it's like, I think for me in my area, I have this, I guess I just have this way of standing on my own, because no matter how much we fight, there are so many systems, at least here locally, that will shut us down just for who we are. You know what I mean? And so again, I think just owning yourself allows you to go into rooms where people start to trust themselves to trust you, because I think that's where it comes in at. You know, it's not really, can you trust me? It's, can you trust yourself to trust me, because you've already had your biases and stigmas that have stopped you from trusting me just for being the person that I am. So that's where I am. Yeah. So that's my input, but that's
yeah, it's powerful. Yeah, I just would have affirmed that. If an individual is watching, the most important thing is to walk in your own truth, I think, you know. And the reality is people do have lenses and they have bias and things that they need to work on. That's not on you. And you know, Kanye talks about this. How does he move in a room full of no's? You know, and how you move is walking in your truth and embodying that truth, and then being open to what comes. You know, trust can be important because it can allow you to navigate systems and spaces with less friction, because the things we tell our young people about, you know, social capital and currency, you know, are real. There are people in our cities that can make a phone call and things happen. And if they know you and believe in you and trust in you, you have maybe an easier way of getting there. But ultimately, it's about, you know, how you walk your own purpose. And so to that extent, and maybe this kind of circles us back around to mindfulness and wellness, I think of trust like myelin. It helps with the connections in the brain. It wraps them and makes them easier, but it's not necessary for those connections to begin with. The more important thing is to fire those neurons and to do it repeatedly. The way I think about it actually comes from my first and middle name by way of example. So my name is Josiah Timothy Gilliam, and those refer to young people in the Bible. And the things that are important for this conversation, I'm not speaking religiously in any way, but just like archetypically, like story-wise. With Timothy, there's this cool idea of he gets encouraged to not let anyone look down on him because he's young, but instead for him to be the example that he wants to see in the world. And I think that's very important. Don't let anyone look down on you because of X identifier or adjective about you, because you're young, because you're Black, because you're disabled, because you have exceptionalities, because you're not rich, because you run a nonprofit organization. It doesn't matter. You are the example. You have the capacity to be the example you want to see in the world. That's where your agency lies, and you focus there and walk through. And then in the story of Josiah becomes king when he's 8, and so he's kind of too young to hold that mantle fully. But there is like the elders in the land, the regents, they mentor him and they support him as he's growing up. And I think that's a very important idea too, because while there are lots of problematic examples within systems, I think that as you are on your hero's journey, as you're learning how to walk and embody your truth, you will find mentors. The universe will respond to you, and people will come into your life for the purpose of pouring into you, that care about your well-being and your success. And you have to be, in order for that connection to really be made, you have to be open to that. You have to believe that that's a possibility. And it might look as weird to you as you think you look in that space. It may be a person that is like so far away from your lived experience that you're like, there's no way I can connect with this person. And they are standing at the ready to change your life, you know, not in some hero sense, but just because they're set up that way, and because you plus them is a compelling like puzzle piece that lets all of these things happen. So that's what I would tell like young people, especially that are walking, you know, trying to figure, you know, things out. It's always within what you could control, is like where to start anyways. And then, so don't let anyone look down on you, and then be open to the idea that the universe will respond to your passion and to your purpose, and bring opportunities and resources, you know, your way. And you might have to wait on it, but that's then what that part of the story is. You're learning patience. You're learning how to be perceptive and how to hone your discernment so that you're not wasting time on things that don't matter, and that you're kind of building you know, up to yourself. And then that's really where mindfulness comes in for me, because as I was, you know, navigating a lot of these nonprofit spaces, I've yet to be a founder or an executive director or even a director in any of these organizations or any of these systems that I've ever worked in. So it's been about, you know, how can I live in flow as much as possible every day. I try to do things so that I live in flow just like a little bit more every single day. And so that I'm in that state, whether I'm riding my bike or whether I'm in Zoom land. And it's a work in progress, but it's helped me because when you're in a scenario where you don't feel like you have a lot of power and agency, like for example, when you're working part-time at a nonprofit and you're hoping it gets full-time, but it depends on whatever grant is happening, and you can't really accelerate it, and they're like promising you, but like you have bills and like you know what I mean, and all the stress is happening and you can't do X, Y, and Z. That can be oppressive on your mental state. And so that's how, when mindfulness came into my life, I was like really struggling with anxiety and with frustration and despair to a certain point. And it was like, here's what you can focus on. You know what I mean? Here are tools that can help you navigate your day-to-day existence. And I've been following hard on that trail ever since.
Yeah, it's beautiful. And I like, I like so much of that. And I want to bring up a few things when we talk about wellness. One, when you talked about the myelin that sheaths the nerves, and we talk about eating right, like I'm bringing this full circle into wellness. Like that's why it's important when we talk about macros, right? You eat carbs, you eat proteins, you eat fats, because fats protect. They work. Myelin needs that fat, plant-based fats. You guys don't just be eating a bag of potato chips, which I have done and do from time to time. But that's why it's important to nourish your body with nutrients that fuel you, because it actually can help heal you. You also spoke, when you used the analogy of the lightning bolt last month, Wes brought up one mindfulness and wellness tool or practice you can bring is writing and journaling and getting your thoughts out of your mind, out of your body. This month, I will share, get out in nature, connect to the ground, get outside, feel the breeze, breathe in, breathe out, look at nature, because you were able to use an analogy that I'm sure a lot of people could identify with. And only because you've experienced it, you've seen it, you've read about it, you have some knowledge of it, are you able to connect that? And nature can teach us so much, and it can take us outside of ourselves, because nature isn't biased. It's not discriminatory. You can sit under a tree no matter who you are. You could sit, you could stand, you could come near that tree. We have these rabbits that bounce around and hop everywhere. They don't come up to you and be like, oh, you're Black or you're Asian or you're Latina, I don't like you. You know what I mean? So a wellness tool, even though you might not even think of it as a practice that is something that's healing you, is to get out in nature. And that's something that I would offer for everyone who's watching us. Do you guys have any tips? And then we'll share a book afterwards that has been impactful to us.
No, you guys just hit it. I love the mindfulness part. I love just kind of being in tune with yourself. And like April said, nature is everything. Writing is everything. And just really educating yourself. I think a lot of us, when we're talking about mindfulness, it's really finding yourself and trying to find healing within too. Finding places and peace within yourself, despite the things that are happening around you. And so, meditation, things like that. I do my 5-minute journal in the mornings to speak about gratitude and things that I'm thankful for. Every day I just know that I'm grateful for life. Just have that opportunity to breathe, right? We know that. And so when you have that opportunity, you also know that you have opportunity and a chance to do more in life and take control of it. Josiah, I just want to say I truly appreciate the information that you provided. It's something that, like I love. And then like you spoke of mentorship, and it's very true that once you do find yourself and once you start going through a path, we always talk about it's a marathon. So once you start going on that journey, mentors will start to fall into your lap, and they probably come from a whole different side of town or a space that really just want to see you grow. They really want to they see all the things that you have, and they just want to elevate you. I found a lot of mentors that way. And, and I'm proud to say that a lot of them didn't come from my community, but they understood and they came from an empathetic point of view and really helped me in ways that I've grown. So mentorship is very important. And like you said, it's just important for you to figure out who you are, find your truth, and then allow that mentorship. It'll start to fall into your lap. It's the universe will come around, but it's how much effort and how much work are you doing on to yourself. And so that's where the mindfulness comes in too. What are the practices you're doing? What are the readings that you're doing? What are the things? Are you writing your pain down on paper? To get it outside of your mind. Like in art, do you have places and things that you can do when tragedy happens, and how do you heal from trauma that we're dealing with on a daily basis? Because I think that's important too, because we have all dealt with it. We just learned how to handle it in a certain way because we do practice these mindfulness exercises and things. So I think that was just something to attack on. It's just we're all dealing with the same type of trauma. It's just some of us have learned how to elevate it in a way that we can create change and make an impact, because we've learned how to consume it where that is not taking over our mind so much. And so, but books, let's go with some books. I'm all for books. So it's funny, April, that you say books. And before I even share one, I tell you right now, I've been stuck on all the books that we talked about last month. I bought them all. And my grandmother's hands.
Woo, right?
It's like, I didn't know it was going to be that powerful. Oh my God. I was like, I didn't even get what the concept of the book was until so I got them all. I got all the books that we did last week or last month. So anyway, you guys start sharing some books while I pull some out.
Josiah?
Yeah, I'll touch on the mindfulness things while he's getting that ready. I encourage people to focus on their breath. And I'll use another example in nature, because we talked about these things that stand in our way and these barriers like trauma, right? That's real. In fact, we just did a deep dive on trauma with a child psychiatrist, a clinical social worker, and someone who runs a Black mental health organization here in Pittsburgh. We started a couple web series just like this where we talk about these things. People can find that on Pittsburgh, MBK Pittsburgh, or on the City Channel Pittsburgh YouTube page. So that's real. Those are barriers and stuff like that. It reminds me of breaking the sound barrier. And a very quick story about that. When folks were trying to break the sound barrier for the first time, this is like Chuck Yeager and people like this. They would keep getting close to doing it, and they would lose control of the vehicles. Like everything would start to shake, and they literally couldn't continue to navigate. And that really speaks well to those of us who are dealing with trauma, generational poverty, these things that show up in life that would hold us back, right? Like you do what you can, and then everything seems to start to shake and fall apart, right? And so what they had to do was they had to develop a new way to navigate so that they could make it through that turbulence. The name of the game wasn't to eliminate the turbulence. It was to increase the capacity to make it through that turbulence. And so they discovered, they invented hydraulics, which is how when you're in your car and it's very easy to turn the steering wheel, that's hydraulics. And they were able to break through that barrier. What they discovered, and by the way, when they were doing that, science and all the experts were saying, you cannot do it. You know what I mean? Like it's scientifically impossible. And we know that reality too, where people will chit and chat and you'll never change and it's always going to be the same. And like, you'll never overcome and it's always going to be this way. So anyways, the name of the game for folks trying to do that was to develop their capacity to navigate. So what they discovered is once you do break through the barrier, and you can see this too if you slow it down with like fighter jets that break through the sound barrier, the air molecules compress at the front of the plane, and it creates this cone that you can many times see, and you can like literally see the barriers. You can see the forces of reality that are lined up against this action, right? Once you burst through it, and it's really cool to see like the plane pop through the cone and stuff like that, it flips, and those very same forces propel the airline. You can go Mach 1, 2, 3 without having to change your hydraulic system anymore. Once you're there, now the sky's the limit, and you can go faster and faster and faster. So what are ways that we can embody that in our own mindfulness journey, since not all of us are flying around breaking the sound barrier? Well, I think it would make sense to look where there are systems where what is under your control and what is under your control and what isn't is touchable, and that is the breath. The breath is largely subconscious, but it's also a system and something that you can take control of. So you can deepen your breath. You can do breathing exercises. And every time you're doing that, you are, as consciousness, taking control of something you don't normally have control or conscious control of, and you're developing and increasing your capacity to navigate through what you encounter in your life. So for me, most of my mindfulness, even when I'm riding my bike or walking in a park, which I love to do, it's around the breath, because I want my part of the universe, this body that I inhabit currently, to embody that I am like between systems of conscious and subconscious, making a choice and building my capacity, literally my lung capacity, also literally my brain's capacity, also literally like my physical capacity. It's all there. It's all there. And so, it's something I would offer to folks, but I'm ready for books whenever we are.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Josiah, I'm going to take you on the road. My next yoga class, I'm like, Josiah, come sit, because
I love to sit.
you've learned so much and you're doing so much. I'm so proud.
Thank you.
So my newest book I have on my phone because I've been listening to it, and it's You Are Your Best Thing: Vulnerability, Shame, Resilience, and the Black Experience. It's an anthology of various writers. Lovia Ajayi, who's a blogger, and she's written a few books. Channing Austin. It's a collective, powerful piece of men, women, all Black folks of every intersection within the Black community. And it was edited by Tarana Burke and Brene Brown. I don't know if you guys can see it.
What is it?
You Are Your Best Thing.
Yep, I see it. I'm writing it down.
And
excuse me.
This is like, it's a beautiful experience of Black humanity, which I think we're not seen a lot of times as humans, and our humanity is not seen. Our pain is seen, and our pain is sensationalized. And we've talked about our pain is looked at like pornography. However, our humanity and who we are is not. And this captures our humanity. And I think it's also a beautiful show of Brene Brown, who talks about shame and vulnerability. A white woman who is really walking in her truth and doing the work of what allyship looks like. She used her platform to support Tarana Burke, and this was Tarana Burke's idea. They talk about how they collaborated together on this. But Brene Brown talks a lot about vulnerability and shame. However, she doesn't understand what it means to just have shame because of your skin color. And so this book shows that. This book shows how we have gained resilience, how we learn, how we grow. And I have cleaned an entire kitchen and folded 20 loads of laundry because I don't want to stop listening to this book. So You Are Your Best Thing is my suggestion and my read right now.
Love
it.
Love it. I wrote it down because I'm on it. So I really want to go back into some of my books, and I feel like a lot of our conversations have pushed it. So, of course, I've pushed out a lot of books of Black authors, and my favorite is Black Pearls. That everyone can pick up every day, 365 days of just daily meditations and affirmations for African Americans. But one of my favorite books that really helped me break the ice of who I was this book by Dr. Joe, I want to say Dispenza, it could be something different, but it's Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. He has a lot of different volumes. Of course, it's one about being supernatural, things like that. But this one really made me kind of go back and self-reflect on all the things that I've learned. Hold on, let me get it. There we go. And all the things that I've learned, and it put me in a place of relearning. So I think Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself, it says how to lose your mind and create a new one. And of course, my other book is How to Own Your Own Mind by Napoleon Hill. So I'm very big on mindfulness, but I'm very big on just that understanding that sometimes we have to relearn the things that we've learned so long. Especially for Black people, we just have to relearn how we want to operate in life, despite the things that we have. And my last thing that I always share is because it's by a good friend of mine, Chad Sanders, is Black Magic. So, of course, I always got to hit that last book, Black Magic, What Black Leaders Have Learned from Trauma and Triumph. And Brene Brown, they did a great podcast on this book as well. So it was very, very powerful. So check this out, especially if you listen to Brene Brown, since April threw the name out. But Brene has really, really, really helped a lot of our leaders out, get some of their books out, get their literature out, and their message out. So Black Magic, but all in all, breaking the habit of being yourself is something that I would highly recommend anyone start to read, but be mindful that you're going to end up facing a lot of things within yourself that's going to make you realize that you could be better. So that's me. That's my reading for today.
Thank you. That was good. I wrote all that down too. We're going to share all this, everyone. We'll list it underneath the comment section, and we'll, constantly share. I'll probably just put out a book list of everything we've been sharing. Thank you.
It's a great idea. Dispenza is amazing. You can find a lot of great YouTube videos with him talking with other folks about his research and stuff like that. Another person that comes to mind when Wesley mentioned that, if folks are know of or deal with, whether a community or family or themselves, issues around addiction, a guy named Gabor Mate, and that's Mate. And he, it's just extraordinary research and just testimony of incredible things. That's really great. And I do encourage people to YouTube it up, because you can find a lot of these folks talking. And I think that's another way that people learn. Okay, a couple books. Let me stay true to the prompt. This is a new one for me. The Sum of Us by Heather McGee talks about this idea of the zero-sum nature of progress. This idea that, like, if people maybe sometimes embody where if other people are going to do better, that's at my expense. And you hear a lot of that, especially along lines of race and gender. If women start making as much as men, that's because men will have to make less, by way of example, right? And these are thought patterns that can be easy to fall into, or that people might not even realize that they're embodying. But this one takes a look at lines of race. She goes across the country looking at different examples, and is really well regarded. I haven't finished it, so I can't give the full account yet. But then the other one, just kind of building on the conversation we've been having, The Power of Voice, a guide to making yourself heard. And I would raise this for any of us that are in the work. It's kind of, for me, what success looks like in a lot of ways is many voices lifted in song, so to speak. So how are you investing in your own voice? How are you thinking about it? It's a tool that you have. How is it being used? Can you improve it? If you can, how would you do that? If you wanted to say that your voice was improved and you were writing down, to Wesley's point, like journaling what that might be, how would you describe it? And maybe these are just interesting questions to ask yourself and see, what you think, along the way, because we need everyone's perspective is like, that's your piece of the puzzle, and it helps inform the rest of us. So those are two that I would raise, and I would retweet the others, so to speak, and I'll be looking for that book list. And then otherwise, two apps that I would mention are Headspace and Calm, for those that want to have a structured way. If they can't get to a yoga class, they don't know a mindfulness instructor, you can get on the road with some of this mindfulness, especially breathing work, on these two apps, Headspace and Calm. Both really, really good resources there.
Ooh, thank you, Josiah. I love you both, and I thank you so much for giving of yourself and of your time. And for those who are watching, you can also go to Open Up's YouTube channel to find yoga practices and breathing practices. And I also offer that Open Up Pittsburgh is a nonprofit that works to bring healing and centering practices to communities with the intersection of Open Spaces is a grant that I wrote that Lululemon funded, and I co-wrote it with Marissa, who's on here, with Open Up. And my intention was to bring wellness to the Black community, and do so because I found that it wasn't offered. And Open Up does that with those with disabilities. So it is a nonprofit. You can look them up if you want to support that nonprofit, our nonprofit. Wesley has disabled, but not really. You can look them up. And he is a CNN hero. nominee, I should say, and you're welcome to go to the GoFundMe page and support that as well. Josiah is with My Brother's Keeper, and they have initiatives and ways that you can support them as well. And I do really encourage you all to take a deep breath, to bring yourself to yourself, because as Josiah did say, that it is a subconscious function. It's an autonomic function that our body does on its own. However, it's one of the only autonomic functions that we can take over. And that can help us all understand that we do have some capacity to take over what we want to take over. So I'm going to end with that. We wish you all an amazing month. Please feel free to reach out to any of us. And I encourage you, brothers, in the work. I encourage you to continue to shine the light within yourself and without. And I love you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Happy Sunday.
Happy Sunday.